Allison watched the ground fall away below her, and the roof of the FBI building came and went. They were less than 10 miles from the wall, and a total of 25 miles from their target destination, so if they flew at the standard 150 miles per hour, they should reach the wall in about 4 or 5 minutes and arrive at the National Mall in about 10. This was a momentous occasion for the young agent. She'd spent her entire career behind a desk, working her way up the ladder, and only occasionally assisting in the field. After the previous mission had gone so horribly wrong, she insisted to her supervisors that she should be present on the ground for command and control. They'd finally relented to her constant requests, and here she was on a real field operation, nervous, but prepared. The man sitting beside Allison on the right side of the helicopter patted her leg and pointed toward the front. They were flying northeast from Quantico toward the old capital, and the wall stretched away as far as her eye could see in either direction. Almost immediately, she noticed a murky brown mist that filled the open bowl on the interior side of the barrier. She'd heard about the radioactive fog that permeated the landscape inside the dead city, trapped forever by the 10-foot-high wall. The fog was one of the reasons they wore the radiation suits on top of their uniforms, and that concentration of radioactivity low to the ground was why the Bureau's hazmat officer had told her that he wouldn't trust their masks to last more than 24 hours. The helicopters zoomed along over the broken terrain. They flew high enough that if any of the old structures remained standing, they'd be above them. From her viewpoint in the center seat, it was hard to see the ground below, but she could see massive destruction through the open doors. It was hit or miss whether the taller buildings were still standing in the turmoil below. Some seemed to be fine, except for broken windows, while others were twisted, broken, and shattered. One building seemed to have fallen intact onto another and lay at an angle against it. Allison had seen the satellite photos from directly above, but nothing prepared her for the emotions that seeing it in person evoked. She couldn't wipe her tears away through the mask, so she had to squeeze her eyes shut several times to try and clear the salty drops. She was startled when both the crew chief and the second door gunner on the opposite side began firing their weapons downward. She strained to see what they were firing at, but it was a lost cause. The helicopter banked suddenly to the right and began a rapid descent. The broken dome of the Jefferson Memorial appeared out the right door, so she quickly looked to the north through the left-hand door, and then there it was. The White House had sustained a lot of damage. 4 of the 6 pillars of the famous South Portico no longer stood. The result was the roofline leaning drunkenly to the west from the force of the blast a few miles to the east. Blackened skeletons of the once magnificent trees stood in stark contrast to the ash-covered white walls of the mansion. There was definitely movement all around the building, but at this distance, she wasn't sure what it was. She realized too late that they were flying too low along the approach to the mall. Something didn't seem right, and then she understood what it was. The Washington Monument was no longer standing as an impediment to the flight of the helicopters. She looked upon the obelisk almost every day of her childhood, and when she went away to college at Georgetown, she'd never strayed far from the watchful eye of the monument. Yet another piece of her soul was crushed. The gunners continued to pound away at unseen targets, and Allison began to become concerned. They had to be no less than a quarter mile out from their insertion point, and the gunners were firing nonstop at something. She keyed her microphone and asked across the team's frequency, "What are they firing at? I can't see." The radio crackled inside her helmet, and Asher's voice filled her head. "This is Kestrel. There's a slight concentration of zombies on the ground. I've tried to get them to stop firing at the goddamn things, but they refused to comply. On the off chance that the helicopters didn't alert them we were coming in, these hotshots in the gunner seats surely did." "Acknowledged," she replied. "Recommendation?" "I'm not sure if they're going to land or if we're going to have to jump. Ensure you don't switch your weapon to fire. Keep it on safe." Allison looked left and right as the members of her team each chambered around in their carbines. "Your call, boss," Asher continued. "Looks like we're going into a hot LZ, and we'll need to come out shooting. Do you want to proceed with the mission?"